Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our second town hall meeting to discuss reopening options for Waterbury Public Schools. I am Verna Ruffin, the Superintendent of Schools, and I'm very pleased to be here with you this evening to give you a general overview, in some instances, a specific overview of the work that is ongoing to prepare to open our schools in the fall and for the 2020-2021 school year. I'd like to recognize Commissioner Harvey, one of our commissioners who is on this call. While I do not see anyone, I'm certain that someone is going to let me know if any of our other commissioners are going to be joining. And I appreciate everyone being here. And if you have questions, I believe that we're positioned to be able to take those questions in the chat box. And I do believe that callers will have an opportunity to ask questions. Recognizing that there's a lot of detail to this plan, I'd like to begin at this point to share with everyone that this plan is based on a release from the Connecticut State Department of Education, and Waterbury Public Schools has devised 3 preliminary plans. 2 of the plans will be getting all students and all staff returned to school in a physical setting, either in person or virtual. And then we've also considered options for what we would have to do in the event of another school closure. Understand that this plan is evolving. It's not engraved in stone at this point. There will be further development as we continue to receive information and guidance from the State Department, from the Department of Health. We will examine health trends in Connecticut and in Waterbury, and we continue to seek input from our teachers, administrators, staff, students, parents, and community stakeholders as we move to reopen schools and to do the very best that we can for our students in assuring health and safety, teaching and learning, and transporting our students to and from school and communicating that effectively to everyone. The first plan that I will discuss with you today is an option A, which is an in-person learning. This is the one that we have received some instruction and feedback from the State Department as well as the governor. Let's get all of our children and all of our staff back into schools. Let's get people back in the teaching environment inside classrooms, because research does say that there's certainly advantages to having students, especially the younger students, in school, socializing, and of course, interacting in person in real time with their teachers. So with that in mind, the first option is a return to school for everybody. Recognizing that first and foremost, we have to provide some health and safety protocols so that everyone can remain safe. We've taken into details into this plan: cleaning protocols, face coverings, health and safety, isolation rooms, and social distancing. For our schools and for our buildings that we operate, because we do operate buildings outside of the 32 schools that we have, the soap and paper towels will be readily available at all of these locations. We'll restock bathrooms frequently, and there will be sanitizing stations in high trafficked areas such as entry points, cafeteria, and other common areas. Our maintenance staff will engage in checks of the stock and the supplies of all of this material and all of the supplies on an ongoing basis. And we will continue to replenish sanitizers, hand sanitizers, soap, and towels, paper towels on an ongoing basis. The HVAC system, we know that some of our buildings do not have air conditioning. So we're committed to, prior to any openings, to monitor the airflow and the air quality to make certain that once we do return inside the buildings, it is the best quality that we can provide, and it will be safe and healthy for all of the occupants. Likewise, we want to make certain that the chemicals and the cleaning supplies that we utilize to clean schools are going to be ordered, and they're going to be ordered in a fashion that exceeds what we've ever done in the past, because we'll plan for that, we'll fund for that. to make certain that we're able to keep our promise of maintaining all of the buildings and sanitizing, especially in between uses, that our students and our teachers and staff will be in and out of buildings. We're going to train everyone how to function in this new environment that requires a higher level of safety and higher level of cleaning than we've ever maintained before. We are also in compliance with the guidelines from OSHA and from the Center for Disease Control. We'll have regular inspections of buildings and we'll adhere to those cleaning protocols and expectations. We will communicate what those protocols are to our parents, our students, our teachers, our staff, in order to maintain a high level of expectancy for what our schools and our buildings should look like and how they contribute to the safety and well-being of all of our staff and everyone. Each school will have a dedicated isolation room. And the purpose of that isolation room is in the COVID-19 unexpected times, we may get a student or an employee that may feel ill. And the protocol is to immediately provide a safe place for this person to be checked by the school nurse and school staff, and to be able to have isolation away from the regular student and staff population until those needs are attended for. In the case of a student, we would make certain that the parent is immediately called to take the student either to the doctor or to take them to be tested so that we can verify whether the student has contracted COVID or whether the student just needs to go home because they may have a temperature. The isolation rooms will be appropriately marked so everyone will know where they are. And we're working with Stay Well, and we're working with our school staff and with nurses and nurses' aides to be able to not only identify those rooms, but to also make certain that they are appropriately staffed. Personal protective equipment, such as masks, will be provided. They'll be provided for our staff as well as for our students. And there will be a high level of sanitation in the room if and whenever it is occupied to make certain that between occupancy, it's going to be maintained and it's going to be disinfected. We will also, because of the way that we plan on scheduling and allowing everyone into the building, we will be able to track and contact trace the student or staff member. We will be able to do that because our health department has provided and made those provisions possible. So anyone in close proximity of anyone that is suspected or has contracted COVID will be notified, and we'll be able to notify people because we'll know the proximity of other people to that person. The student will be released, as I said earlier, to the custody of a parent or guardian. We want to make certain that in that process, we also have up-to-date information that we can immediately respond, and the parent will immediately come to attend to the student to take them to get further assistance after they're notified. The containment plans and protocols will be followed based upon the review and diagnosis of the student or the staff involved. We know that not everyone that contracts a fever is COVID positive. But what we do know is that we don't know. So we're going to provide those opportunities. We already have 2 testing sites available in Waterbury, one at Duggan and one at Cal, that we envision will continue to be open. And there's a possibility that we'll have more testing sites available by the time that we are going to be returning to school. And we will also, if someone contracts COVID, their return to school or work will be dictated based on the medical review and appropriate guidance, which will include, but it's not limited to being quarantined, because we also know that sometimes people can have COVID and it's not, it's asymptomatic. We require face coverings for everyone, so students, teachers, administrators, staff, visitors, which we will be limiting visitors to the school, but anyone in the school, anyone in contact with children, our teachers, our staff will be required to wear a mask. Our clerical assistants, our clerical help, all of our food service workers, all of the staff that come in and out of school because they are teaching and learning and preparing and maintaining the building will be required to have face covering. And staff and parents are encouraged to supply a clean mask every day. But in the event a child forgets the mask or something happens, we are going to have masks for our staff and for our students readily available to issue one. Our social distancing for each school or district building will be reviewed constantly. Right now, you may hear that it's 6 feet apart. Sometimes you may hear that it's 3 feet apart. Sometimes when we get to social distancing on a school bus, you'll find out that it's not designated as any feet requirement anymore. So we'll constantly monitor that. But inside our school buildings, we're going to maximize the space that we have to assure that our students and our staff are separated in such a way that it provides the social distancing. We're committed to utilizing some spaces that we have within our schools, including spaces that perhaps we've not traditionally used for instruction, so that we can maximize the space. That is going to have that will evolve as we determine how many students are going to be in every classroom, and so how we're going to position the desk and how we're going to make certain that if we need additional space outside of the traditional classroom, which students may go there, who the teachers are going to be, and we're going to take all of the precautions to assure that we have appropriate signage so everyone knows where to go, what the 6 feet look like, what the 3 feet looks like. And staff and students will be discouraged from sharing materials and belongings, because we want to make certain that it only is in the hand of the person that's going to be using it. We will refrain from having large assemblies or large meetings because we want to assure social distancing to the maximum. Each school and building will have a designated liaison. And that person is going to be a contact person, someone who can answer questions about health and safety, compliance issues. This is going to be someone who's really engaged in what's happening with the students, the parents, the faculty, the staff, and administrators to answer questions that someone may have. Because certainly in this COVID-19 environment, people want their questions answered as quickly as possible and as accurately as possible. And so our school and staff and our families will have the contact information for this designee, and the role will be assigned to an administrator or someone with the authority to not only address the compliance issues, but also will know how to obtain the answer if the answer is still undetermined at the time that it is asked. We have nurses in our buildings, but some buildings do share a nurse. And so we are currently working on a way to be able to not only have a nurse in the building, because nurses are provided to Waterbury Public Schools through the health department, but we are working on ways that we perhaps can assign a health aide to a building that may not have a full-time nurse, so that there's always either a nurse full-time and or a health aide in the school. So the health provider or the person that can answer any health issues will be available on all of our campuses, and not on a temporary basis, but on a permanent basis. We will and have considered what the scheduling may need to look like to allow time for students to wash their hands regularly, and guidance for families and to staff to know, when do you stay home? Because now more than ever, we want to make certain that if people are not feeling well, they need to stay home. Sometimes we want to tough it out, but in this time, we want to put people's mind at rest to know that when they're not feeling well, they need to stay home. And guidance for teachers regarding students who do not abide by the mask mandate. We are in no way creating a plan to make this punitive. What we want is safety and health above everything else. And so when a student is not going to be wearing a mask, or perhaps incapable of wearing a mask, we will have the recommendation and the stipulation that perhaps a shield will be in order. But at any rate, someone in the school, in the classroom, teaching and learning, a mask is going to be required, or a shield. We'll have emergency contact information for our students and families. As I mentioned, while that is not a brand new expectation, what we have found, especially through COVID-19 and the school closures on March 13th, is that much of the updated information had not been consistent. So if somebody moved during the year, or if somebody's phone number changed, or someone's information, contact information, or the first person of contact changed, it was not always properly recorded. So we want to make certain that before school opens, we have the accurate information for everyone before re-entry into the school year. The next component of all of our plans, and I want to state again that regardless of the plan, whether it's plan 1, 2, or 3, those safety precautions and those safety protocols are going to be consistent throughout all 3 plans. Teaching and learning is the next area that we have considered very, very deeply. We recognize that we want to try to keep students in groups together as much as possible, recognizing that for some students, for some classes, for some programs, that becomes a little bit more challenging. But we do want to have consistency in where the students are attending their classes, who they're attending their classes with, and we want to do that so that we could maintain as close as possible the same group of students together. In the event that someone does get ill, we want to be able to contact the students that have been in touch with that student, and we want to be able to do that in an efficient way and quickly. We want to consider the methodology may change for each grade level, so it could look very different for elementary, middle, or high school, how we keep track of students that are in groups together. We are also going to make accommodations for students' arrival and departure, for their meals, and for movement around the school to maximize safety, and also with always the recognition that safety and distance protocols are going to be in order. Parents will have the opportunity to access their teachers by phone, email, and in virtual setting. And they can have one-to-one meetings virtually, conversations with their teachers. We'll build that into the schedule so that we can make certain that that occurs, because our traditional parent-teacher conferences and our traditional in-school meetings will not exist in this beginning, for certain, the beginning of the school year, and it may not be for the entire school year. While we understand the importance of family engagement, it's going to occur in a virtual setting as opposed to an in-person setting. I mentioned before the physical configuration of the classes will be changed, and in many instances it will be changed significantly, and we'll continue to monitor that as for instance, as more and more students come back into the school. So that's not something that's going to happen one day and it will stay this way. We'll have to monitor that on a consistent basis. And we'll also provide teachers with best practices concerning collaboration, working in small groups, and how to share or not share materials. Maybe it's purchasing materials for more materials for students, so that we discourage some things that are being shared to eliminate a lot of different touches on an item, or on a color, or on a pen or pencil, or on paper. We also consider in our plans transportation. And the State Department of Ed, issued this that we can operate close to full capacity when school starts. And Waterbury Public Schools, in compliance with that, will make certain that we monitor what that looks like from day 1 to day 2, because we know that ridership can change. So we're going to be monitoring this consistently, because we don't want the bus to be so crowded that we have 3 students to a seat. While the guidance is that buses can operate at full capacity, we're going to define what full capacity means for Waterbury, so that we're not crowding buses. And likewise, our drivers, as well as any bus monitors and students, will have masks, and in many instances that the mask will be for everyone, but in some instances, and depending on any preconditions that may exist for our special needs students, the driver and or the monitors may have other protective gear as well. Parents and guardians are going to be asked to pre-screen students as they bring them to the bus stop, to make certain that we didn't miss asking critical questions about how the student feels, about whether the student is not feeling well enough to be able to spend an entire day at school. And of course, if a student has fever while they are at school, then they're going to be in the isolation room, and we're going to call parents immediately for assistance. Students will also practice social distancing while they're on the bus. And for us, what that means is that they're not going to swap seats a lot of different times. We may have some seating charts to make certain that, again, if we want to track who the student is in contact with, we need to have more of a designated seat. Then you can sit anywhere, any day, and then you could move from seat to seat on the same ride. We want to make certain that that is curtailed. And also that we're going to check the ridership on a regular basis. It could be that we need additional routes, and it could mean that we don't need as many routes. We don't know that yet, but they will be altered based on what that ridership will look like. And daily, both at the end of that ride, the bus will be totally cleaned so that when students ride again the next morning, that bus will have been disinfected. And then at the time that students exit the bus to get into the school, if there is a second or a third run, that bus will be disinfected between each one of those routes. For our special needs transportation and students with an IEP, we will provide that same level of consistency. And as I mentioned before, if additional protective gear is in order, we will be providing that as well. We will consider options for parents who have chosen to transport their student to school. As a matter of fact, we encourage that. But sometimes it may present a hardship for parents who may need to drop their student off a little early so that they can get to work, or maybe pick them up a little bit later because they need to work and they don't get off at 3:30 or 4 o'clock. So we want to provide some before and after school care. There will be some communication to make certain that we're asking parents for what they need, and based on funding and based on what we're able to provide at particular sites, we want to provide that for our parents to help facilitate transporting students instead of having all students riding the bus. And we'll ask parents, whenever we get closer to that, we'll ask parents to choose the option that they prefer. And then we'll ask them to please consider, once that option is made, that they adhere to that option at least for one full semester before changing it. Because we do know that things change. You know, you might be able to transport today, but you may not be able to transport, you know, in a few weeks. But we ask that you try to make a commitment that will allow you to be able to do that at least a semester, so that those bus routes don't get overcrowded, and so that we can provide the appropriate entry and exit from the campuses, because that's going to require different requirements for our crossing guards and for people who are directing traffic, you know, in all of our school locations. As I mentioned before, the buses will be cleaned, and that's going to be a given every time, and they will be disinfected, and the appropriate mask will be required of everyone, including our students who are riding the bus. That's all of what we're committed to doing, regardless of what plan we implement. But this would be everybody back to school. We do this all the time. We have to get started to make certain that that happens. At the same time, in Plan 1, and consistent with everybody returning to school, we've also devised an option B. And option B is supposing I have a pre-existing condition and I choose for the fall semester, maybe I don't want to send my child to school the fall semester, but I know they have to be in school. It's mandatory that everybody returns to school. Then the district is going to provide an option B, and parents can opt into that. You know, staff can opt into that, and it's a distance learning. And so the reason why we're not calling it a full-fledged academy or full-fledged learning is because it's a temporary response to not being able to be there in person. So a group of people will be there in person, but maybe some people will say, I want to opt out. I want the distance learning component. And we're going to provide that. We're going to provide it with high quality teaching and learning, face-to-face interaction with teachers and staff. And we're going to continue to improve on our distance learning model. But that's all in part 1, Plan 1 to reopen schools. In option B for the distance learning, as I said, it's going to be an opt-in. We ask parents to make that decision based on a full semester because then it's easier to staff and it's also easier to be able to determine just how many students and how many teachers and how many staff members are going to take that option as a preferred option to return to school in the fall. The distance learning and the distance learning provisions will be much improved. We, as I said before, and I've said many times, we know that we were not equipped to deliver a full distance learning model. We know that. It's a given that we didn't, because when we were having schools, we weren't relying on a one-to-one technology. Not all the students had computers. Not all the students or staff had computers at home. So we recognized that we had to do some fast learning, and we're continuing to learn. Our platform for the virtual learning will continue to improve with teacher interaction with students in real time, as well as opportunities for students to learn and post their assignments and get feedback from their teachers. And also an opportunity to be able to work with small groups so that students will be more engaged in the learning, and they'll get the assistance from the real teacher as opposed to sometimes working independently on a computer for long periods of time. So we'll develop a schedule for that to occur in this Plan B. And we are going to continue to use Google Classroom. We continue to refine it. Our teachers are also continuously working, and they're working towards Google Certified Educator status. And many of our teachers have already done that. And we are also learning from best practices during our summer school, because we are using our summer school as an opportunity to learn how to get better at distance learning. And then when we come back in the fall, regardless of which model we use, we're going to continue to improve on distance learning. This is not something that any district refines to perfection in a year even, much less two. It takes time, and we're committed to doing that over time, because I truly believe that whichever model we adapt for the fall of 2020, we're going to always have some high level of virtual learning that will allow our students and for opportunities beyond our imagination. So whether that's to take more courses that they've asked to take in the past and couldn't do it because of the number of hours that they were physically present, I think this opens the world of opportunities for our students and our teachers and our staff. And that's going to take time as we develop and evolve. But definitely continuous improvement in the distance learning with real live interaction with teachers and students is a top priority for us in this virtual learning. Plan 2, which is what we're calling our hybrid plan, has some similarities. But in Plan 2, we have an in-person instruction. So for parents and teachers, opting in and coming in and going to school, they're in school for part of the day. Then they go home, or at least the students go home. The teachers continue to engage with their students in a virtual in the afternoons. And for those students in our hybrid model, for those students whose parents choose to have the option B, which is, I'm going to register my student for a virtual academy. Those go side by side, hand in hand. In person for a half day or part of the day, then you go home, you continue your learning in virtual. Or for those who say, I'm going to continue to do all of my learning in virtual, you can do that in Plan 2. And so in the morning, you're working independently. You're working on work that your teacher has posted. You have a schedule. And then in the afternoon, you have a real life teacher connecting with the students, connecting and working with students in real time and over instruction, and an opportunity to help students that are struggling, and an opportunity to be able to work in small groups if needed based on what the learning needs of our students are. So you can see that in Plan 2. So Plan 2 is our hybrid plan. You go to school for part of the day, you go home and you continue virtual learning, or you decide that you're going to opt for plan option B, and that's all virtual. Parents sign their students up for a virtual K12 Academy, which is a full day virtual learning. Morning, you learn on your own based on what your teacher has posted in Google Classroom. In the afternoon, your teacher's on in real time working with you in a virtual setting. And then our Plan 3 option is our virtual K12 Academy. And then that's what happens if we're not returning to school. What happens if there is an outbreak, or if Connecticut numbers rise and we see more numbers, an increase in COVID-19, or if we see an increase in Waterbury, and then our decisions are going to be based on that, and it's going to be based with what the State Department assists us with, as well as our internal team working to see what does Waterbury data look like. And if we are not capable to return to school, then we all go to the virtual K12 Academy, and all students and all teachers and staff will be in this virtual environment. And if that were to happen, again, all of the protocols for improving on the virtual environment will continue. Teachers are continuously learning and posting and refining on the lessons as well as the delivery. And we would go into a full K12 Academy for all students if we have another school closure. But we would not interrupt instruction. We would not have any gaps in when do we come back to school, because the learning would be continuous and the platform will have already been built. There are many people that have worked on this plan and continue to work on this plan. Even before the guidelines came to us approximately 2.5, 3 weeks ago, even before then, Waterbury consistently worked on our plan. There were committees that were working to reopen schools, and there were committees working to how do we end the school year? What are we going to do for summer school? Do we have summer school? Is it going to be in person or virtual? So there were people working a long time before we received any of the guidance from the State Department and from the governor. But after we received that guidance, we went into a different mode of work, which was not only how we're going to end the school year, but what are we going to do when schools begin in the fall. And so the people here, and you'll see those more on the website, there were many people committed to doing that. And the mayor had a committee from the city, and they were constantly working. And in addition to that, we also had a Waterbury committee that was consistently working. And we worked side by side for guidance and for information to help us make the very best decision for our school district. We are considering exploring the possibility of changing the first day of school from August 27th to September 8th. And most recently, I think it was yesterday or day before yesterday, the State Board of Education voted to waive the 180-day requirement for all students and staff to come to school. And with that in mind, they've allowed us to be able to use approximately 3 days that we could use simply for training and preparing everybody for this new working environment. And so you just can't put everybody back into school or a building without preparing them for what is this new world going to look like. And so I'm very grateful that the 180-day was waived, but this sets us into possibility that we could start on September 8th. Maybe we'll get some additional guidance in August that will help us to refine on our plans before September. And then maybe we'll get something that will help us, even define it more on September 1st, because we understand that the State Department, as well as the Health Department and so many others, are working to determine what are the health trends, how do we keep everybody safe, and that's a priority. And then if we have some flexibility in when we start school, maybe we can start school with a better plan than if we started school a little bit earlier. And so we're considering that in Waterbury as well. We have engaged many people. So I thank you for being on this town hall, but I also thank the many people that have participated on forums, whether it's students, parent liaisons, we've had DPAC representatives, we've had some of our community stakeholders, we have subcommittee members that have worked on various subcommittees, both for the reopening of school, as well as the recovery, as well as the steering committee. We had subcommittee members join in for a community forum and received a lot of questions and some feedback from them. And we've sent out a survey to all of our teachers, as well as to families, to inquire about distance learning and their experience with distance learning, so we could best learn how to improve it for the future. We've also sent out a survey to our teachers and our staff and our administrators to ask them about their their expectations for the fall and what considerations are they dealing with to help them make a decision about the return in the fall. And then we've had a very different tool for us, which has rendered some amazing results, and over 1,900 responses from stakeholders, parents, teachers, students, community members that have participated in thought exchange. And the results can be found on our website. The thought exchange ended last night at 8 o'clock, and all of the results have been compiled and they are ready for you to be able to view them. I've shared them with all members of the commissioners, and so they are also available for all of us to see what your thoughts were and what you're thinking right now, which is critically important to us. We cannot possibly move further without getting that input from all of you, which will help us make the best decisions that we possibly can, keeping safety and health as a top priority for our district. This distance learning survey that was taken and that ended on July 8th, the company that did this survey takes about 2 weeks before they can share that result with us. So we're hoping that we will get that result next week and we will share it. This is going to help us to guide some of our practices in the distance learning platform. I'm going to stop here. I mean, it's a lot of information, but I appreciate you're allowing me to share this with you. And this plan could change. It could change regularly. We want the very best plan for Waterbury, but we are going to have to submit three plans to the State Department by July 24th. And even I suspect that in submitting those three plans, those are three options. We do not know today, nor will we know next week, which plan we are going to fully implement at the beginning of the school year, other than the plan that the governor and the commissioner have stated is that let's plan for a full return. And that would be all encompassed in Plan 1. So I'll stop there and I will certainly answer your question.
Thank you, Dr. Ruffin. Is there an Anna Napolitano on the line?
I'm sorry?
Hi, Dr. Ruffin.
Yes.
I have a couple of questions regarding the distance learning.
Yes.
So if we opt for the distance learning option B, would my child be getting direct instruction from a Waterbury Public School teacher, or is it like a planned program like Edgenuity that they would be expected to do for the fall semester?
No, it is a interaction and teaching and learning with the real teacher that would be teaching that course in real time. Now, the schedule would look different and the classroom format would look different, because we don't expect our students to sit in front of a computer from, 8 o'clock in the morning until 2:30 in the afternoon. But the instruction will be from the real teacher with the real student.
Okay, and so just to follow up to that, for the hybrid model, where the student goes to school half day and then goes home and continues the distance learning half day, and you said that's also going to be live and interactive with a teacher?
Okay, so let me go back and finish answering the first part that you asked me about Edgenuity. We utilize Edgenuity at this point for credit recovery for our students. We don't use it at the present time for new learning. So the learning that I was talking to you about, it's going to be with your child's teacher and your child having interaction in a teaching and learning setting. It'll just be virtual. And then to answer the question that you just asked me about the students that will be in school in the morning and then go home in the afternoon and what that interaction will look like, it could look a variety of ways. We have to first determine, how detailed are we going to be with that model? It could be that the student has an office hour with the teacher based on small groups that need specific instruction on a skill that perhaps they still need to master. Or it could be, I'm really feeling comfortable about the assignment and the work that I did in class with you, and I don't really need anything for this afternoon. But if I have a question, I need to know when is the teacher going to be on so that I can log on and have interaction with my real life teacher at that time. So it could look something like that.
Okay. My concern is I'm just wondering how that might look or work, for example, myself as an educator myself, and if I'm expected to be at the school and my child is going to school half day, I'm going to have to leave work, pick them up, bring them home, and I'm not there to help guide them, and my child's going into kindergarten, so they can't really navigate the system on their own. So I'm just wondering how that option might actually work for those little ones.
Absolutely. And I think that what we would need to ask you to do at this point is to pose that as a problem, to pose it as a scenario, so that we could problem solve and perhaps come up with an answer. Because today, I don't have an answer for that. But it's a real live situation, and I don't know how many other people. I suspect quite a few of our teachers and staff, parents will have that. So please indicate that so that we can take that to our various committees, and then we can problem solve. How would we mitigate that? Because it's a real concern.
I do believe I put that on the thought exchange as, a concern.
Sure. And I was so excited to receive the feedback, and we're analyzing that. I've seen it all, but I'm going to delve in it even more. We have a lot of unanswered questions at this point. We have a lot more to do to be able to refine it. And quite honestly, some of it, we may not know this month at all, but we certainly want those questions answered before we get into whatever model is going to be implemented for the fall.
Thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you for your question.
Is there a Kimberly Rivera on the line?
Yes, I have lots of questions. The first one, first of all, thank you for having this meeting. I do appreciate it as a parent with 3 children in the Waterbury school. There's a lot of information that you just talked about, and it's a lot to process. I'm a visual person. Is there any way that the information that you just spoke about, I understand that it's a draft version, but it could be posted or put on the web so we can print it out and kind of just take our time, read it, and process it? Because these are big decisions that we as parents have to make. That's my first question.
Yes, the information that I'm sharing with you will be published in such a way that you'll be able to see it all. I have a board meeting tomorrow night. It'll be discussing matters with my members of my board, and then all of this information, the PowerPoint, everything, but the thought exchange is already there.
And Dr. Ruffin, Ms. Rivera, the PowerPoint, all the information has been posted.
Okay, so the PowerPoint is on our website at this point?
Yes, ma'am. Everything is in one place. You'll find a PDF version, a PowerPoint version, as well as the results of the thought exchange.
Okay, so that answers the question to the parent. Yeah, you're right. It is a lot of information. So please do look at it. And if you have additional questions, please do not hesitate to reach out and to ask us. And we'll provide, when we know the answer, we will share that immediately. There are some things we don't know the answer to at this point, and we'll say that to you. And when we do get the answer, if it, we will post it and we'll make it readily available to everyone.
The other question that I have, when you were talking about the option B, the distance learning option component of part of the plan, you stated that it's the teaching is in real time, but that the schedule is looking a little different. What does that look like? What does that schedule look like? What would it look like?
We're working on that. We don't know exactly what it's going to look like. What we do know is that we are not going to expect that students and teachers just sit in front of a computer all day. So what it might look like, it may look like some lessons and videos of real live lessons about a skill or a particular concept that's going to be introduced to the teacher by the teacher, posted so that the student can view it and learn from it at any time. And then the real schedule where the teacher interacts with the real student in real time, that's going to be on a schedule. And I don't want to falsely tell you a schedule and then you think that that's engraved in stone, but I'll give you an example. So for instance, if from 9 to 9:45, the teacher is online with his or her students in a particular subject area, then that would be the time that student would log on and be with their real life teacher. But the actual work perhaps could also be viewed in a video or viewed in Google Docs so that the student could go back and review it at any time during the course of the day, or maybe the course of several days. And then if there's an assignment that needs to be submitted, it can be submitted electronically. It could look like that. Another way of conceiving that would be if the teacher has office hours. That would be based on the student need. The student says, I really need to see my teacher. I need to ask questions. I need to understand something that might just take a few minutes for the teacher to explain to me. The teacher has an office hour. It's from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock. I'm going to make certain that I get on and I have real live communication with my teacher during that day. Could look like that. I don't know if someone is trying to ask a question, but it's breaking up.
I have another question. With regards to grading, I know things had to be done a little bit differently this past 2 marking periods. If the student, what's the grading going to look like this upcoming fall semester?
We actually have a committee that's working on what grading would look like in 2021. And so there's more information to come forth in the next several weeks that will explain what grading could look like in this different platform. I do not believe that we're going to continue with the pass or incomplete, because now with the building of the distance learning and virtual learning platform, and with opportunities for real-time instruction from the teacher, I don't believe we necessarily need to have that in place, because we would be getting into a different phase of the virtual learning or the in-person learning. But having said that, we have an opportunity in Waterbury to really define what that grading would look like in advance, to communicate it to parents and to students and to everyone, what that grading system would look like in 2021 and moving forward. And that committee has already started some work on that. And if you're interested, if you'll contact either Sujatha, who's on this town hall, or my administrative assistant, Tanya Bombero, we can include you as a member of the committee that would like to work with others on that.
Okay, so I have a question. Because I was wondering, because you said that there wasn't going to be any parent-teacher conference at all. Is there at any time that we will be able to meet our kids and teachers?
I couldn't really hear the question. It breaks up.
I'm sorry. I said, because you said that there's not going to be a parent-teacher conference, probably like within this whole year coming up. I was wondering because is there going to be a point where at least once we're going to meet the student's parents, teachers, sorry.
Yes, we're going to utilize email and telephone, and we're going to utilize one-to-one conferencing virtually so that you can meet your students' parents, but it will be in a virtual setting.
All right. Okay. I also have a question. You said that for the buses, you said that they're still going to have the buses available, right? To pick
The
up the
buses
students?
are going to be available.
Oh, okay. So is it going to be like 6 feet apart, the kids sitting down, or is it going to be just regular thing?
No, it is no longer required to have the 6 feet apart on the buses. The guidance that we last received was that the school buses can operate with pretty much the same amount of students that they did previously. But for Waterbury, we want to pay attention to that because we recognize that for some of the routes may have had more than 2 students per seat, and we want to make certain that does not happen. So for us, it's going to be providing the bus transportation, but making certain that there are no more than 2 students on a seat, and then we may assign seats to make sure we keep track of which students are sitting next to each other in the event that we have to do any kind of reporting or contact reporting.
All right. Thank you. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You're welcome.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have anyone else on my list, but if there's anyone on the line that'd like to speak, please go ahead.
With regards to school busing, I understood that the guidelines are a little bit different. I just think it's a little contradictory that 2 kids can sit close in a seat on the kids, but one during the city. That's the social distancing. I hope that we can look at that a little further.
I'm not really able to understand what that question was. I heard something about social distancing.
You guys open the trunk?
I'm sorry.
The chair was about riding the buses and whether the distancing needs to be reviewed with respect to that, Dr. Ruffin.
Okay. Yeah, everything that we're doing right now, we're going to consistently review it and monitor it. I mean, for instance, ridership on the bus, I mean, we're not expecting that on day 1 it's going to look like day 5 even, because we are going into some areas where we would have to maybe regulate ridership in a way that we didn't have to do that in the past. Or maybe students chose a particular route because it was the route that their friends were riding, and they could have chosen another route. And we don't know that. But what we do know is that we have to monitor it carefully because we are, by design, going to make certain that the buses are not extremely packed. At the same time, we recognize that the most recent guidance we received is that the 6 feet apart or even 3 feet apart is no longer required for bus ridership. The masks are, and for everybody that would be boarding the bus, the students, the drivers, the monitors, and everyone.
Is there anyone else on the line who'd like to speak?
Yes. For when my kids were in kindergarten, they finished the year off at home, and they gave them their computers. We're supposed to take it back to the same school they got it from, or will you guys take it?
Yes, if you had a computer and your child is going to continue in Waterbury Public Schools, you can keep your computer so that they can continue learning this new school year that we're moving in. If someone is moving, they are to return the computer to the same school that it was issued.
Okay, because my kids are transferring from Gilmartin to generally. So I'm guessing that I have to take it back to Go Martin, right?
Let me ask my
No,
chief operating
no, ma'am.
officer or my director of technology to answer that for you.
Yeah, I'll jump in on that one, Dr. Ruffin.
Okay.
As long as they're staying within the district, they can keep the computer. As they transfer to the different school, we will catch up with that. We have the tracking in Power School. So as your registration of your child changes over to Gilmartin or Tinker or any other school you're moving to, as long as you're within the district, you can keep that computer. And as your records catch up in your transfer, so will our records with respect to the computer, and we'll be able to track it that way. So you don't need to bring it back to one school and pick it up at another. You can keep the computers you have, as long as you're staying in the district.
Even if they're not going to be doing school from home, they're going to go to school. That's okay.
Yes, we'll deal with those issues. We're moving to more of a one-to-one technology, and as Dr. Ruffin referred to, there may be times, whether the classic snow days or others, where you might need the computers. Depending upon the age of the student, there still may be a take-home element. So we're starting off the year in that fashion, and as the year gets going, with depending upon the model that ends up being chosen, you'll likely keep the computers at home. It may be that some remain in the school for convenience of the younger kids and so forth, but we will work that out once the school year starts. So for now, you just stay status quo.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
Well, at this time, I would like to thank everybody who called in. Please stay connected to us on our website as well as our social media. Please ask the questions. And again, I don't respond to the questions that come on our social media page, but I do respond to questions that either come to us directly. But we do post accurate information on our website on a regular basis, as well as we provide those in social media. And please stay connected. We have one more town hall, but we probably will have many more meetings after that as we get closer to the school. And we want to provide you with up-to-date information at all times. Please also, if I do not have everyone, I do not have parent emails, I do not have student emails, so I'm not able to communicate with parents or students that way, but I can through the website, and I do quite frequently. So please stay tuned, and please continue to be safe. And thank you very much for staying together, because I do believe that although we are building something brand new together, I do believe that there's strength in the collective voices that we're hearing across Waterbury. I do believe that things are going to move in a positive direction with everybody staying connected with the correct information, and we are committed to providing that for you in a timely fashion. So thank you, and I hope all of you have a great evening.